Hey friends, it's Simon Hurley and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to share a look at my new Plaid Builder Peel-Apart background stamp and the incredible versatility of it. This year I released the Pinstripes background stamp and this one was a major hit, mainly because you can peel apart these stripes and use them individually on a card to create your own colorful backgrounds. We designed the Plaid Builder background stamp to have varying different types of plaids and different textures of the design to give you really beautiful results. You've got varying sizes of solid stripes, then you have these diagonal stripes in again varying different sizes, and then we have this really cool sort of checkered stripe again in varying different sizes. I love to share my inspiration, and the inspiration for these sort of checkered stripes was from this woven pillow. I loved the kind of woven design and that it went in and out, and I wanted to replicate that in this plaid background stamp, so that is those beautiful checkered texture stripes. Since these aren't all solid lines, the varying textures in the plaid will help get some depth and dimension in your stamping. Now let's start off by just stamping this. I always design my peel apart backgrounds so you can stamp them solid like this. So we've spread out the plaids so that you've got an even dispersion of the different types of stripes. I love doing a sort of tone on tone look, so I'm going to use cookie dough on top of a light tan cardstock. I'll ink this up. And then I like to take my cardstock and I'll place it right down into the background stamp. Then you can bring in sort of a pressure tool or use your fingers to go all the way around the cardstock and make sure you have good even pressure so that everything stamps. And when I lift this off, check out that nice design. All right, then I've inked it up again and I'm going to flip it sideways and stamp it once again. So again, lay it right down into the design and then apply pressure all the way across the surface to make sure that it all stamps. And when I lift this off, you get that really beautiful plaid design. And it's a little bit light with that cookie dough ink, but I'll show you another example where it's a bit darker. To finish this card off, I'm bringing in the Friendship Floral stamp set. I love the two large bold floral images in here, and that you have all of the different solid pieces to fill these in with stamping, so it makes it really simple to color them in. Then again, I'm going to ink this up with some black ink, and then we'll stamp it right down onto our stark white cardstock. Then I'm going to start grabbing some of the solid pieces from this set. Here I have the solid flower, which I'm going to stamp using a little bit of sidewalk chalk. And then, of course, I'm going to go in and do some shading. So I'm going to shade using Triple Berry. And you kind of want to roll the ink pad onto the surface. And then lastly, I'm going to bring in some Crown Me right at the edge to give it even a darker color. And then I can stamp it right down onto my surface. All right, and anything that you want to be the same color, you can put kind of at the same time. And then once we got them both lined up at the same time, we can grab our acrylic block and position them both down. All right, for this, I'm going to use a little bit of Love Struck on both of these, and then you can stamp them right down onto the surface. All right, so moving into the leaves, I'm just going to, again, line them both up at the same time, position them on an acrylic block, and start our stamping. For these, I'm going to use a little bit of Psych, which is this really bright lime green color. And then I'm going to bring in Viper, which is kind of this dark olive. It's almost a way darker tone of Psych. Stamp that down. All right, and then lastly, I'm going to go in with this larger cluster of leaves. I'm going to stamp this down using a little bit of Overzealous, which is a warmer, brighter green. And then I'm going to use a little bit of Fake Plant to add some shading to it. I like to add some shading wherever the leaves kind of meet the flower. That's where the most shading would be. And then we can go in and stamp this down. And I like to use several different shades and tones of green like this, because that's sort of how it would naturally be found in nature, so I like the different variation. Then I'll adhere this floral down onto the background using a bit of foam tape to pop it up. And then I love the bold sentiments in this set, and this sentiment that says life is better with a friend like you is just such a great one. So I'll stamp that down in some black ink. And then, of course, I'll throw over a layer of clear heat embossing powder to finish it off. And there is that finished card. I love the really great tone-on-tone plaid background. It adds just enough texture, and then the color of the bold florals really stands out and pops. I want to show one with some brighter colors too, so I'm going to go in using a little bit of Clear Skies and ink up this background stamp. Whenever I'm inking something up like this, especially when there's solid stripes, I usually take my ink pad and apply pressure while kind of twisting the pad like this to get lots of ink onto the surface. You can see we've got great coverage, and then to even it out, I kind of just take my ink pad and lightly tap across the surface. It's going to really easily blend and smooth out the ink and give you a great coverage. All right, now I'm going to bring in my stark white cardstock. I love this cardstock, especially for stamping. It's going to give me a nice smooth result. I'll place it down and then apply some good pressure. When I lift that off, check out that beautiful plaid design, and it's stamped really nice and evenly. And like I said, the checkered stripe gives almost a little bit of a halftone look. It's a little softer. I love the texture that the stripes add, and the solid lines are, well, you know, solid and really nicely stamped. And again, I said I'm going for a playful look, so I'm gonna use Psych for my next color, which is this kind of yellowish green tone. I love just how bright and playful this color is. Then I'll take this and I'll flip it sideways, and then we can lay it down, press it into our stamp, and then again, give some good pressure to make sure that everything transfers nicely. And here is that finished background. Like I said, it's so cool to have all the different types of stripes. Here with the solids, you get a nice green tone in between, and when it's sort of the striped or checkered stripes, it gives a little bit of a softer effect and layers really nicely. I'm gonna finish off this card using the Mythical monster set. I love all of the adorable monsters in here. They've all got their own little personality and some great sentiments to go along with them. I've cut down an oval for a grounding point, and I'm going to ink up the monster using a little bit of VersaFine Clear ink, and then I'll stamp this right down onto the surface. At this point, you guys already know that I'm gonna throw over a layer of clear heat embossing powder, and I'll heat set it until it's clear and shiny. I'll use my ink pads to smoosh on a little bit of color down onto my craft sheet, and then I can pick this color up with a paintbrush and use it as kind of a watercolor. I always like to start off by painting down a layer of water first. This gets the cardstock ready for the color we're about to apply, because if we go straight in with the color, it's just going to sink right into the dry cardstock. But adding the water down gives it a little bit of time to move on the surface. I'm starting off with my lightest color, which is Sidewalk Chalk. This is a really light purple, especially when we're adding water down to it like this, and I'm just going to paint down a solid layer of this color. And you can see that because we added that water, it's really easy to go in and add down a nice wash that's even across the surface. Then I'll go in using a little bit of Triple Berry, and I'm just going to add this into the spots where there would be shadows. On these monster images, it's really easy because there's sort of lines where there would be shadows. Here, I think this guy has some little scales, and I'll add some darker color in there. You can also add it where different body parts meet. So where his horns meet his head, where his mouth is, there would be a little bit of a shadow. To add some shading to the edge of this and make it kind of stand out from the rest of the card, I'm going to use a little bit of Clear Skies ink on a dauber and go right around the edge to add a bit of color. Alright, and that finishes off the card. I love this super bright and bold plaid background and how simple it was to create, and then of course finishing it off with that fun and playful monster. Alright, now I'm bringing in a sticky mat. This one happens to be the Clearly Amazing mat, but I love the Brutus Monroe sticky mat as well. Either one will work, and I'm going to place this right in the center of the grid lines. The reason I love this is because it has these grid lines, and because it's sticky on here, the grid lines stay in the same spot so we can use them for aligning our design. Alright, I'm gonna start off with this stripe, which is a thick stripe, but it's got the stripe pattern throughout it. And when using these, especially the thin ones, you want to lay them down on your surface so that it's nice and straight. Then you can go in with your acrylic block. Here I'm using the Simon Hurley Create acrylic blocks in the large size because it fits these peel-apart stamps perfectly. Now for this stripe, I want to use a little bit of Shady, which is this dark gray color. I'm going to go for kind of a fall plaid pattern here. So I'm going to ink this up. Then I'm going to align it with these stripes. So I can align it at one end, and then I'll choose a stripe that's a little bit lower and align that up at the other end. And then we can stamp that down. And when we lift that off, check out that beautiful striped pattern. All right, I'll ink this up one more time. And then this is where that mat becomes important because I want to stamp this on the other side, but I want to line it up exactly the same way so that it crisscrosses right in the center. So I'm choosing the same two lines on the other side to line it up with, and then stamp it down. And when I lift this off, you can see it crisscrosses beautifully in the center, and having the stripe design makes it kind of interlock and then get darker in the center. Then I'm going to bring in this stripe, which actually has 3 stripes in it, and again, it's that striped design in it, so it's got that texture. I'm gonna lay this one down, and especially because it's super thin, so that it'll take a nice straight shape, and then we can go in with our acrylic block and pick it up again. I want to bring in a little bit of orange, so I'm going to use some Guppy, which is this light, bright orange color. And then I'm going to line it up right next to that last stripe and stamp it down. And one more time, I'll do the same thing on the other side and stamp it down. But this time I'm going to do it below the stripes as well. And then stamp it down, and I'll stamp it down one more time. All right, so you can see the plaid is really starting to build. Again, where it intersects, it gets a little bit darker, and I love that bright orange pop of color. All right, next I'm going to use this really thin stripe with this diagonal design, and then I'm also going to use one of the more solid stripes to follow it. Now again, you want to set this one and let it rest on your mat to make sure it stays nice and straight before we apply it to our acrylic block. And here I'm using that lighter cookie dough color. I love this as a nice neutral brown. going to ink this up. I'll butt it up against that last stripe and stamp it down. And I'll follow the same process for all of the other stripes, just making sure to line it up the same way by butting it up against that last stripe to make sure it's nice and straight, and then stamping it down. Then I'm going in with that same cookie dough color using the larger stripe, and I'm just going to continue building upon the design. And you can really see that once this plaid starts building up, it really becomes this beautiful and kind of magical pattern. It's so much better than a pattern paper too, because you can keep recreating it if you want to, and you can create it in whatever colors or patterns match your project. I love this plaid pattern and how versatile this stamp is because I was able to take little individual pieces and make them all different colors. And I love kind of where it all overlaps here, the different designs we get. To finish off this card design, I'm going to go in here, leaving a little bit of a white border and just cut a straight line down. And then I'll follow by cutting a straight line right back up so that we can add this down onto a different color cardstock. I'm using a little bit of tape runner on the back of this dark gray colored cardstock. This is a top folding card base, and whenever I apply anything down, I always start up at the first corner, then follow along at the fold there, and then it should line up perfectly. All right, then I'll apply this down on some foam tape, and I love that we're working on a dark gray card base. It really gives some nice contrast and ties back into the plaid colors. I'm bringing in the Happy Fall stamp set. I love this one and all of the imagery you get inside of it. I think I'm gonna use these two solid pumpkins and one of the sentiments from the set. All right, now I really like these pumpkins because you can either use the outlined image and then stamp this solid image inside, or you can use either one by themselves. So today I'm just using the solid image by itself. I'm gonna apply a little bit of orange down. Then I'll use a little bit of a darker orange and kind of roll the color onto the surface to apply a little bit of shading. And then last, I'll use a little bit of Weeping Willow to add to the stem. And then we can stamp this right down onto our card. And you're gonna see you get just this beautiful blend of colors down. All right, now if you want to, you can also kind of create a gourd with a couple different colors. So here I'm gonna use a little bit of Slippery and Wet, and then on one side, I'm gonna come in using a little bit of Guppy for more of an orange tone. And then on the other side, I'm gonna bring in a little bit of Later Gator, which is that green color. I'm excited to see how this one looks. I'm going to stamp it down. You get kind of a beautiful mix of colors there. All right, you know what? I think I changed my mind. I do want these little black outlines to add a little bit more detail to the images. Align it and then stamp it down right over top of the image. All right, then I'm going to go in here with my Fiskars Spring Assist scissors, and I'm just going to simply fussy cut these out. It's a really simple image, and these scissors are great at getting into smaller details, so they're really great at fussy cutting. All right, then I'm going to stamp down my Thanks for Everything sentiment in some black ink. And there's our finished card. I really love that plaid background and how we were able to tailor it with the colors and pattern of our choice, and bringing in those little pumpkins to really ring in the fall season. All right, you guys, I hope you really enjoyed today's video. Leave me a comment down below on which card was your favorite. And also down there is a full supplies list, and using those links helps support me, so I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!